Hello, this is Pastor Jared, and I'm talking to you about the background checks and explaining the differences between the two and what we have to do. There are 4 different background checks that we're doing. 3 are required by law, and 1 is the best background check that we do. It's the PA criminal check, the PA child abuse check, the national criminal check, and the FBI fingerprint or residence affidavit. Like we said before, the FBI, you either have to do the fingerprint or the residence affidavit. It sounds like overkill, but in reality, none of these background checks actually overlap with each other completely. You see, we all have this vision in our heads of NCIS or CSI programs in Hollywood where they can get these fingerprints, and immediately every organization that's ever fingerprinted anybody has a database, and they can quickly, within seconds, run these things. And actually, that's not the case. There are lots of different databases for fingerprints, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. And in Pastor Robert's time as a police officer, he noted that in 7 years as a police officer, he had 1 positive fingerprint come back. And so that's it just doesn't work like Hollywood. And so all these different background checks, they're not necessarily talking to each other or communicating with each other. The PA criminal check does not cover what the PA child abuse check does. And the PA criminal check covers felonies and misdemeanors for adults that happen only in Pennsylvania. This overlaps with our national record check some. Obviously, things that happen in Pennsylvania could have happened anywhere, and so they go on the national record check. However, if any crimes were committed in any other state, we wouldn't know that by just doing the PA criminal check. So we have to do the national check, which is actually maybe the most important one. The PA child abuse check is also required by law. The criminal and the child abuse are required by law. The national check is not, although it's our most effective check. And those are required under the penalty of fines and jail time to the overseer, us, who don't require them, i.e. children's pastors, youth pastors, lead pastors, board members. So also the national record, criminal record check does not cover any of the crimes that the FBI fingerprint check does, and vice versa. The FBI check is actually very limited. It covers crimes like immigration fraud, drug trafficking, or crimes committed across state lines like kidnapping and running with a child. That particular crime is why we have to do this check at $27.50 per person for everyone who has not lived in PA for 10 years consecutively. The national record check, however, covers all crimes, particularly the ones we are most concerned about: sexual abuse, indecent exposure, child molestation, etc. And although it's not required by law, it's the best practice for us to do this national record check. The residence affidavit that you are signing as a PA resident who's lived in PA consecutively for 10 years must be filled out in the presence of a notary, and the notary symbol must be on there. So we don't need both the FBI fingerprint check and the residence affidavit. Now, these checks are all good. Ultimately, they are not the end-all. They in themselves are a deterrent and provide a measure of proactive safety precautions for our kids. We, however, are the ones who actually provide safety for our kids. And we're the ones who keep them safe. It's our love, it's our vigilance, our constant care, our protection, our interaction with these kids, and getting to know them better and better and loving them to Jesus. That's really going to keep them safe. These checks are a good thing. We want them. But the reality is this: if we don't do these checks, we could go to jail. So I love you all so much, but none of us are going to go to jail for your irresponsibility or for paranoia reasons. So the kingdom needs these things, and we need to be doing them. And these aren't moral types of things where we can object to them on moral basis. They're actually good moral things to do. We have run into some cases where people are not comfortable giving us their Social Security number on these forms. Now that is actually, we just found out, allowable. You don't have to put your Social Security number. They will still run the check in state law now. So This is not our requirement. These background checks are Pennsylvania state law now. Pennsylvania is mandating this, so it's not from us. It's not anything that we can come against the government about and say in good conscience we shouldn't do this. The Bible says in Romans 13, 1 through 4, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, he who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and he will commend you. For he is God's servant to do you good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword for nothing. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer.